Have you ever heard of the moon-eyed people? This might actually be one of the most believable legends that I have ever heard. And this story has been passed down by the Cherokee people for generations. And keep in mind that this all started way before Christopher Columbus discovered America. The legend talks about a race of people that were pretty small, had perfectly white skin and large blue eyes. Due to light sensitivity, they were nocturnal beings who lived underground in the caves. They were said to inhabit the area that is now known as Murphy, North Carolina. And it's said that they had these really flat faces with white beards. Why would the indigenous people be talking about people with white skin this early before colonization happened? And there might actually be an answer. One of the theories suggests that they could have been descendants from a Welshman who decided he was going to travel across the Atlantic Ocean in the 1100s. That theory says that he probably landed somewhere in Alabama, or what's now known as Alabama, and him and his crew traveled north up the Tennessee River. And it's not crazy to think that inbreeding for a few generations even would cause the crazy deformities that the Cherokee people talked about. Just look at how crazy some of the kings and queens used to look back in the day. And what's really cool is that there's even possible evidence of these people. First is this statue that some people believe straight up just depicts the moon-eyed people. This is currently displayed at the Cherokee County Historical Museum. There's also a stone wall that was left behind, and the Cherokee people say the stone wall was built during a battle that the moon-eyed people had with the Creeks, which is essentially what drove the moon-eyed people out. And then the legends say that the moon-eyed people either traveled west into what is now known as Tennessee, north into West Virginia, but either way, they have remained underground. I don't know, maybe cave people really are a thing. Did you know that stories of mermaids date back to 1000 BC? So growing up, I was in love with mermaids. I had a huge book with mermaid stories from around the world, and this is one of my favorite stories. This is the story of Atargatis, the first mermaid. In Assyria, Atargatis was seen as this beautiful goddess of fertility and feminine power. She met a mortal man named Hadad, and they fell in love and had a daughter. This daughter actually became the queen of Assyria and was said to be the one who created the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Well, sadly, tragedy struck and Hadad had died. And Atargatis blamed herself for his death even though it was an accident. So, completely distraught, she cast herself into the water, where the gods tried to save her by turning her into a mermaid, or at least part fish. But that almost makes this story even more tragic because now she is a half fish, alone in the water, still without her beloved. Have you ever heard of the mogollon monster? Said to inhabit the densely forested area of the Mogollon Rim, the mogollon monster is described as very Bigfoot-like. The first sighting of this creature was in 1903 near the Grand Canyon by a man named I.W. Stevens, who described seeing a very tall, human-like creature with long hair and 2-inch long claws. Another sighting included a Boy Scout troop in the 1940s who were camping in the Mogollon Rim. They claimed to have seen a large hairy creature over 7 feet tall, walking upright, and it stunk. The description of the mogollon monster tends to be a creature covered in very long, black reddish fur, standing over 7 feet tall. He has large red eyes and takes very wide strides, leaving 22-inch footprints behind. He is said to have a very skunky odor, sometimes even smelling like dead fish. He's nocturnal and can be territorial, sometimes even getting violent to protect his territory. And he makes nests out of pine needles, sticks, and leaves, and he likes to mimic the sounds of nature. However, he's also been known to let out blood-curdling screams. Now every year in Pine, Arizona, there is an endurance race named after this monster. It's called the Mogollon Monster 100, and it is a 100-mile race through the forests and mountains of the Mogollon Rim. I think that would literally kill me. The shunka warakin. The name translates to carrying off dogs. The indigenous people would tell stories of this creature who would sneak into their camps at night and literally steal their dogs. The first documented sighting from the white colonizers came in the 1880s. The Hutchins family, who lived in the Madison River Valley in southern Montana, would tell stories of a wolf-like creature with dark black fur. And in 1886, Israel Hutchins claims that he shot this beast. He called it ringdocus. He had the body stuffed, and it ended up being displayed in a general store in Henry's Lake, Idaho, until it went missing in the 1880s. The stories of the Hutchins family were all but forgotten until cryptozoologist Mark A. Hall got involved. He heard stories of the shunka warakin in Nebraska, Idaho, Alberta, and Illinois. Cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman would also tie these sightings to the ringdocus. Then in December 2005, a wolf-like creature started killing livestock in Montana. By October 2006, this creature, which was now called the creature of Macomb County, had killed over 120 livestock animals. And then in 2006, Montana Wildlife Services shot and killed the creature that they thought was responsible for all these killings. The animal resembled a wolf, but it also had characteristics that weren't generally associated with a wolf, such as orange, yellow, and red fur. So they had tissue sent to the University of California, Los Angeles for DNA analysis, and the carcass was sent to National Fish and Wildlife Forensic Laboratory in Ashland, Oregon. And there doesn't seem to be any records of the results. However, in 2007, the stuffed carcass of the animal shot by Israel Hutchins was discovered. It was found in the Idaho Museum of Natural History, and then it was displayed in the Madison Valley History Museum. Obviously, there are theories on what these creatures could be. The theories of the indigenous tellings of the shunka warakin could be prehistoric animals. I'm going to butcher this, but they think it could be hyenodons or chasmoporthetes. And then the modern day tellings obviously could be some sort of a wolf or wolf hybrid. Have you ever heard of these? Have you ever wondered the origin story of the headless horseman? Because it's not Sleepy Hollow. This is actually a piece of Celtic folklore called the Dullahan. He is described as a headless horseman riding a black horse and carrying his head in his hand. And his face has a huge grin, and his eyes are always moving. And he can see across the entire countryside, even in the dark. There are a few more details about his appearance, but I kind of thought they were pretty disgusting. Especially considering he's basically riding around collecting the dead or dying. And while he doesn't look for people to take their lives, he does look for the people who are dying. And he's said to be the embodiment of the Celtic god Crom Dubh, which translates to the dark stooped one or the dark crooked one. And he's kind of an evil deity. From what I read, he was like all about human sacrifice. And he had some pretty wild run-ins with St. Patrick. Beat up some angels. Kind of reminds me of the scene where SpongeBob and Patrick are trying to prove that they're not goofy goobers. And now this folklore has stories around the world. And here he is very well known as the Headless Horseman. What exactly is lurking in the waters of the Sea of Cortez? The stories date back generations. These sightings come from mostly fishermen, and they claim that there is a giant sea creature, possibly a shark, living in these waters. These claims state that this creature is up to 60 feet long and an estimated 50 to 100,000 pounds. That's like 5 to 10 elephants. And it got its name from its dark coloration. The stories say that it's very similar to a great white shark, but darker, and that it has noticeably darker eyes. People have even claimed that this creature has capsized boats and even attacked whales. Theories include that it's simply a very large great white shark with hypomelanism, which is the opposite of albinism, or that this is a megalodon. The Black Demon was also featured on the show Monster Quest on Animal Planet in an episode called Mega Jaws, which doesn't exactly give it credibility. Did anybody else absolutely hate that show?